Guys, on yesterday, I told you about the AI boom and how it's been paid for on borrowed money. NVIDIA co-signing loans so customers could buy NVIDIA chips. You had $2.46 trillion in corporate borrowing this year. And I told you that the bill was going to be reporting overnight with some earnings. Major companies with earnings release on yesterday. And the bill reported. And it was worse than I told you guys. I'm going to open this show up today with 3 numbers. Just 3. And I want you guys to really pay attention to these numbers. Number 1, 109 or $119.8 billion. I'll repeat that one more time. $119.8 billion. That is what Google brought in last quarter. A lot of money. Okay? That's only on 3 months of business. $119.8 billion, which is up 24% from a year ago. And it is the biggest quarter in history of Google, right? God dang, $119.8 billion in 1 quarter. All seems well. That number seems very, very well, right? I want you guys to hold on to that. The second number is negative $0.59 billion. That is Google's free cash flow for the same 3 months. Same company, the same exact quarter, Q2 of 2026. Negative $5.9 billion in free cash flow. Now, if you don't understand free cash flow because you think it sounds like a corporate term or a Wall Street term, it's not. It's pretty darn simple. It's the simplest thing on the whole earnings sheet. It is what is left after the bills. So think about it. Money in, think about money out. And that's it. So here it is. 2 numbers. Google took in $39.1 billion in cash. Google spent $44.9 billion. They spent more than they actually made by $5.9 billion. And I want you guys to think about that for your own house, your own budgets. What happens when you spend more? Debt, right? But think about your house for a second. Put this in the perspective of many of you guys who are watching this show, you're homeowners. So you decide that, hey, you know what? I want to do a big renovation on the house. It's time. Need to upgrade that kitchen. I want to wrap around that. Maybe I want some additional space on top of you. So we're going to add a second floor. And you are writing checks. All feels good. Okay? The house looks fantastic. Right up until your credit card gets declined at the hardware store because you're going to pick up a new ceiling fan. Decline. Damn, what's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on? I want you guys to listen to what's true in this moment. You still own a very valuable house that is updated. But, and here's the other piece of it too. You ain't broke, but you cannot buy that grill to add on to that new debt. That's kind of what it's like. You no longer have the ability to just operate freely anymore. Okay, you spend all this money. You know, when you give your husband and your wife a budget to go out there and do the renovation on the house, you say, hey, you're still staying within this budget. Okay, they go over the budget and they expect for the furnishings, additional stuff to be added on to the house. Can't do that anymore. Budget's gone. We spent more. That's kind of what it's like right now at Google. So you got a beautiful house, but your car keeps getting declined. And everything about how Google spends changes in that second. And the part that makes this show, something special for today and not just a headline is Google has been public since 2004. So they've been public for over 20 years, 22 years to be exact. And this is the first time that they have ever done that. First negative cash quarter in the company history. Same quarter last year, they were up 5.3 billion, excuse me. This year they are down 5.9 billion. That is, what do you call it, a $11 billion swing in 12 months? That's what's happening right now at Google. That's what the earnings report showed at Google on yesterday. That's what a lot of people were like, uh-oh, they're spending a lot more money. Alphabet announces second quarter 2022 or 2026 results. My numbers ain't right in my head this morning, so you're going to have to bear with me. Let's blow this up. Consolidated Alphabet revenues increased 24%, $119.8 billion, reflecting strong performance across the business and our 12th consecutive quarter of double-digit revenue growth. All sounds good. All sounds good. And the numbers are going to sound absolutely fantastic. Google Cloud saw a meaningful acceleration in growth as revenues increased 82%. All sounds good. You go and look at the financial highlights. Oh, man, that looks real good. Okay, yeah. Yeah. You're not going to see very much on the free cash flow unless you decide you wanted to dive into it. You're not going to see it unless you dive into it and you understand where you're going to be looking at. Okay? Then you start to scroll. Then you start to look. And then you start to say, holy smokes, these guys are spending a whole bunch of money. Where's that money going towards, Antoine? Well, I'm getting ready to tell you. I want you guys to focus in on this. Type 39 in the chat, first of all. If you ever had a month where more went out than it came in. I'm sure every one of you guys have done that. Type 39 in the chat. Where you spent more than you had what's coming in. That's called going into debt. That's what it's called. 13.8 million. That's another number that I want to share with you guys. And that is how many working Americans are on Medicaid. Not unemployment people. These are working people, and 2 out of every 3 of them work full time. Not part time. Not a side hustle. 40 hours. And still on government health care. 10.6 million more are on food stamps. 7 out of 10 of those work full time. So you got 13.8 million people on federal health care, on government health care, and 7 out of 10 of those work full time. Crazy. That number came out on yesterday from the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. That's the government auditing the government. And it's not a survey, it's a poll. It's basically the receipts. I want to share that with you guys for a quick second. Going into how people aren't doing so good, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show. So here's the thesis for the show today, and I'm going to open this up a little bit long-winded. What all 3 of these numbers are telling you at the same time. For your entire working life, there's been one rule that held, especially if you're my age range. That rule is typically if the company is doing good, the company is hiring. Growth meant more jobs. Revenue meant it's time for better raises. It's time to give people bonuses. It's time to give people extra money in their pockets. That's what we knew for our entire working lives. You picked a growing company and you were safe. You have some stability. Maybe a place that you can stay in last your entire career if that's what you wanted to do. That rule broke last night. And it broke in public with a number attached to it. I want you guys to type broke in the chat if you've always believed a growing company meant a safe job. Because that was the rule. That was what we were taught. That is what we learned. So you got a company with the best quarter in company history, and they still ran out of cash because the money ain't going towards the people no more. It's going towards buildings, and it's going towards chips. Everything that we talked about on yesterday. And nobody sent you a memo about that. So, just like I do on this show, I'm sending you the memo this morning, right now. And by the end of this entire hour, you're going to know 3 things. Which side of the ledger your job is sitting on and where the money actually went. And what you can do about it this week. Not next year. This week. This is the Daily Climb. I'm Antoine Wade. Let's look at the data. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the data, guys. Because it's going to be an important one today. We got some good data. And I want to start the show off with some good data so that you guys know what's going on and what happened last night specifically related to Google. And I want to be really careful with the first one, okay? Because the story is not that Google spent a lot of money. We've been talking about big spending for months and how much money they are going to be spending towards the AI build out. That is old news. And I'm not going to sit here and waste your time on a whole bunch of old news. The story is that they crossed a line. There's a difference between spending a lot and running out. When a company's got extra cash sitting there, they get to choose what they want to do. Just like we talked about the old way. You want to pay people more? You want to hire more people? You want to invest in other companies? You want to buy other companies? You want to buy machines? When you got a whole bunch of extra cash, you can do all of that. And the government taxes incentivize you to go that direction. That's a company with options. But when the cash goes negative, the choosing is over. And they already chose. And now they are going to be borrowing to keep going. And that is a completely different company to work for. Same logo, same brand, nice little G with a little bit of red and a little bit of blue in it. Same badge on your chest, but different math underneath that company. And I want you to notice something about the timing on this one. Yesterday, we talked about companies borrowing to pay for AI. NVIDIA becoming a bank for a lot of these companies. I used the analogy of it's like you going to a car dealership, and instead of you getting a loan from your bank or wherever you're going to get it from, the car dealership co-signing for that loan for you to buy that car. That's what's happening right now in NVIDIA. So you got $2.46 trillion in corporate bonds this year. That is 1/5 of that whole bond market tied to AI spending. That was all yesterday's show. And last night, Google walked into that same room, the most profitable company and the most profitable machine ever built, now on the borrowing side of the ledger. I want you guys to type choice in the chat if you get the difference between spending a lot and running out. That gap is the whole show today, guys. So where did it go? You got $44.9 billion in one quarter. That's called CapEx, capital expenditure. It's a fancy business word. It's a fancy MBA word. If you got in your MBA, you understand a little bit more about capital expenditure. But think about it like this, okay? It's the things that you can touch: buildings, land, power lines, chips, servers, things that sit in a warehouse and hum. So same quarter last year, that number for Google was $22 billion. This year, it is $44.9 billion. So they doubled it in 12 months. 60% of it went to servers. 40% went to data centers and networking gear. 0% of it went to payroll. Here's the thing about CapEx. CapEx don't pay people. That's what the word means. And for the full year, they are now saying $195 to $205 billion. They raised that number because before they were at 180 to 190 back in April. So they raised it again. And they said in 2027, it goes up significantly from there. So you got $205 billion on buildings and chips in 1 year at one company. Now I want you guys to watch what makes it real instead of just big. The finance chief, okay, CFO, Anat Ashkenazi, she told analysts, we're still in a supply constrained environment. Supply constrained means they cannot get enough. They cannot get enough supply. So they are spending $205 billion and still cannot build fast enough. And she said they have been saying that for multiple quarters now. So she's basically saying the demand for what they have is real. And I want to be fair about that. Because yesterday we talked about, hey, you know what? Is this whole thing being financed by companies pumping companies? Is the demand real? That was the question that we had on yesterday, you remember, right? Well, Google is basically saying the demand is real because they have a supply constraint. They ain't burning money on just a hunch. The bill is just ginormous. That's what they're saying. I want to go to CNBC on the earnings takeaway for Google real quick. Let's go here. Let's listen in real quick.
Mike, we're seeing shares fractionally higher. It is a beat on revenue at $119.8 billion versus $116.93 billion that was expected for Q2 revenue. Now, with EPS, this is a GAAP number of $9.11. We are not comparing that to the estimate here because in the quarter, Alphabet saw a $99 billion equity securities gain. Cloud revenue, this was the big question going into the print. We are seeing an 82% jump year over year to $24.8 billion versus the $22.24 billion that was expected for cloud revenue. And I've also got a read on CapEx in Q2, $44.92 billion, also beating the estimate there. I'm going to keep digging into these numbers and come back to you guys.
You heard it. You heard it. Now, this next part is the piece that almost nobody covered. You're not going to see it on CNBC. And it's one that I want somebody to tell me if I was an investor in Google. Google said they're going to rent computer power from other companies this quarter. They're going to rent it from competitors, basically. And they said it out loud that it's going to cost them margin to do it. Ashkenazi called it bridging strategy while they build their own and said it creates modest margin pressure in the near term. So that's the polite version that she said it, the corporate version. Now, the plain version is this. You got a $205 billion to spend on buildings. And you still got to rent a storage unit. That's how I look at it. You are spending $205 billion on buildings, but you still have to rent out storage units. That's how far behind the building is. And I want you guys to think about this and don't think about it as negative. See the opportunity on that side, right? They're willing to spend more money because there's a supply constraint. They even have to rent out additional capacity because they cannot meet the demand. What is this telling you? It's telling you that the opportunity is there, which means that this thing is going to continue to go on for a lot longer. At least that's what Google's saying. That's why they're pointing their cash towards it. And the market noticed it immediately. Two companies that rent out computing power, and we talked about them on this show before, they both jumped on the one sentence. So you got companies like CoreWeave up 4%, Nebius up 5%, not on their own earnings, on somebody else's sentence, on Google saying, hey, we're going to have to rent out additional capacity. Now, I want you guys to write that down as a job signal, because when the biggest company in the world can't build fast enough, the folks who build for other people are the ones who's eating good, and they're eating really, really good, making all kinds of money, eating steak dinners every single night, going on trips, going on vacations. They're talking about this boom being magnificent. Those are the ones who's eating real good.